Hey folks, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy.
All right, folks, here we are on Tuesday, November 19th. We're going to take a look at ACHR Aviation today. So I've had ACHR on the list for a while, and I've just been sort of checking in on it periodically, waiting to see when something would kind of make it interesting. And we did have this recent run up to, closing in toward 5, but then it drew back quite hard and retested that 411 level that we had on the chart from, I think the last time we charted this was like February of 2024, but these levels are holding up really well. And now with today's news, I think it was an $11, price target, which is, more than double, well over double where it started the day for sure. So quite impressive, and it got things moving again today. So I thought we'd come check and see where things are situated and what levels might come into play. So we're going to do that here in the Weeble chart, and then flip over to the Thinkorswim and call it a video. Now, we are situated between this 494 and this 524 at the moment, so those are the nearest in levels. I'm not going to make adjustments to those. Like I said, I think these levels have been holding up really, really well. We do have a big gap here between 559 and 699. I think those levels are, again, accurate. But if we wanted to throw something in here, we have a little bit of price action, but it's pretty decent price action, actually. A lot of repetition through this, say, 603 level. And we could put another one in here in case it keeps plugging away 645. Now, I don't want to crowd things too much, so I might leave it there, because if it does pull back, we can lean on the levels below the current price action. That 494 is pretty tight in. Percentage-wise, because the price is so low, it would be a percentage swing for sure, but I feel good about that level. And I don't feel that anything here is super strong enough that I would plug it in just now between that 494 and that 446. And it did move quite swiftly through that 446 today, and it moved down swiftly through it the other day. But it did hold nicely. That's where it wicked off of on Monday. And so, I do feel good about that level. So those are the levels that I would look for. If it does need to, again, reconfirm, much like it did here on this 411, right? It burst through it, it did bypass that 446 level, like we just spoke about. Tried to make an attempt at that 494, fell short, slipped back through 446 without much of a fight. But at 411, the buyers showed up again and came in nice and strong. Let me just see where the volume looks like here. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of volume down here. So there's going to be a lot of probably profited shares at this point. Yeah, total profited shares proportion almost 75%. So question here is, are folks going to want to let it ride? Are folks going to be locking in some profit? And if so, is it going to be in big numbers or in sort of relatively small, or at least numbers that don't come in for a real adverse impact on the recent swing up? We'll see. A degree of folks may see that $11 price target and kind of ride it out, and maybe set some trailing stop loss or something like that, to be able to just squeeze as much as they can out of it without risking all of the gains. But that's getting quite interesting. But back to our levels here. Moving off that 446 after yesterday, big push today, right up through that 494. So that's what you'd want to see if you're an ACHR bull. And then coming, a bit shy of that 524. But I mean, for any other reason, it was sort of because of the bell, right? I mean, this was the day. It's not like it made an attempt there and then pulled back quite strongly. It was sort of consolidating here into close. And so we'll see if it needs to reconnect to that 494 and reconfirm off of that, or even that 446. you know, again, that would be a big percentage change. So probably if I'm an Archer bull, I wouldn't want I wouldn't want to see it have to come down and retest that 446. That may feel like a bit much, but testing something here in this 494 range, or even down here, you see this candle top and this candle top are pretty aligned at that like 477 level. So even if it dipped a little bit below that 494 but stayed in range and did something off of that 477 or so, that that could certainly make sense to me. Now, if we just ditch these levels for a moment, oh, I guess I could zoom out here quickly. If it does keep marching forward, we just plotted that 524, 559, 603, and then we do have 645 and 699 up here as well. So certainly we don't have the ground covered until 11 yet. If we need to, we'll get there. So bullish crossovers are happening at the moment, right? This is the all-important 183 EMA. That's this gray guy here. So it's come off, and it didn't need to dip down and reconfirm off of that, not even as of, say, last Friday, but instead came down, dipped to the 8 EMA, this white one here, and that's where it's moving off of the last couple of days. So again, you're looking for indications of buyers coming in where you'd want them to, potential for additional bullish momentum that needs to be exhausted before any larger pullback happens, and that's what you'd want to see on that EMA. That said, that EMA is way down here at 436. Price is getting darn close to $1 above where that EMA is, which is a huge percentage shift. But just because it's extended above the EMAs doesn't mean that it has to come back and slam into them to retest them. It could just sort of drag them up as the price climbs, and then at some point it'll slam into them for sure, but it doesn't mean that it has to be any time in the near future. So if all stays as it's currently sort of situated, we would be looking for this 34, this 21, this like orangish, peachish color, cross over that 183 or continue crossing over it, and then that 34, which is the red one, to cross over the 183 as well, and then we'd be in a fully bullish formation, sort of in an overall bullish state. Now, it has had a hard time holding that in the past, right? We saw it kind of bang off the 183 way back here, and it made a decent climb, but it was a short swing, right? It was a swing below this guy here, and then it tried to reconnect with the 183 and lost it. Then it turned totally bearish for quite a while, and then it tried once again to retake it, and that's when you saw, sort of similarly, right? We could have made this video on this day and sort of, back in July and said, okay, we have these bullish crossovers that are starting to take place, but then it came down, reconnected, and lost it again. So I would just be very aware, if you're willing to hold it through, to and through, anything that approaches or reconnects with that 183 EMA, which right now is way down at 385, right? So it's quite far off. But if you are looking to hold it for a longer term, or you're willing to hold some portion of shares all the way down to that 183, I would just be aware that if it slips it does have a tendency in much of the recent past, right? If it doesn't bang off of it like it did here, right, that's obviously a much different motion than this guy, right, where it gets pinned and keeps sort of like sputtering, trying to sputter above it, and then it's pushed down hard and then rejects right off of it and then comes down really hard. So I would just be aware if it does come all the way down to that 183 again, to just sort of, put all your eyeballs on that and just watch it very, very carefully and decide what you want to do based on whatever you see there. But it's your trading strategy, not mine. So over here on the think or swim side of things, we do see the ATR levels now being exhausted, right? Here's the call trigger, this blue. This lasts for the whole month of November. This is what December will look like. And if it comes in right now, it's going to come in mid-range on December, right around 515 or so. That call trigger will be up around 547. These are dynamic, so these are going to shift as additional price points and candles get put in. So just keep that in mind. But right now it has exhausted. I mean, it had already previously exhausted on that swing a few days ago or last week, and it's been able to push through. Again, we're looking for signs of continued strength, continued, bullish momentum that's looking to be exhausted. That would be it, that it already had pushed through its full +1 ATR level, and then it sort of came down, reconnected, and then pushed up higher through it through it and through it again within a matter of days. So that to me says that there's potential. Of course, anything could change, but the potential looks to be there, that it could continue to push these ATR levels and could just sort of be setting itself up for coming in at the mid-range or near the call trigger in December if all continues to push well. Histogram looking nice. We had this lengthy trigger, right? You had this nice accumulation here as it was in compression on the oscillator phase, on the phase oscillator down here, and right at the mid-range, batting around between mid-range and the call trigger as it was triggering on the TTM squeeze indicator, and then it fired, and boy, it's just, yeah, it's going for it. So set the catalyst aside, the chart was lined up and primed for a move anyway, and so to the extent to which those things are just sort of converging in some form of bullish confluence at the moment, that might be, again, another reason for some added oomph, for some additional capacity for it to push higher and stretch out above these ATR levels, and certainly through this channel and extend far above it. And I would just say, keep in mind that stuff gets out of the channel. We look for it eventually to come back into the channel, right? This is the channel I'm talking about here. Doesn't mean that it has to come back in quickly. It can spend quite a bit of time outside of the channel. I don't know if there's a great example. This is a pretty brief period. So, in the recent past, like, no great examples of Archer doing it, but that doesn't mean that it can't this time, but I would just say, like I do with RSIs, for example, right? Folks are like, oh, it's overbought in the RSI, it's got to come down. It's definitely not true. Like, people can keep buying, even though it's overbought on the RSI. And the scariest one to me is when it's oversold, right, on the RSI, and people are like, oh, investors have to start coming in, it's oversold, it's a great buy. And it's like, no, they could certainly just keep selling and or sitting on the sidelines and look at the other hundreds or thousands of stocks that are on their radar and choose to go that route. So just like I would say, don't let the RSI situation fool you. Don't let it being out of the channel fool you either. We're just always interested to see what it does when it makes contact again with the channel. Does it get drawn into it? Does it bounce off of it, much like it did here, right? It bounced off of the green wave cloud. Again, another thing that we would typically say is a possible indication of extended bullish momentum that needs to be exhausted before it's going to pull back any further. And that's what we're certainly seeing today. On the phase oscillator, this bullish momentum being pushed through right now, to me, it doesn't feel that it's overly like hyperextended on the phase oscillator. So they're just sort of tea leaves looking at how this all converges and what makes sense with the charts, as it also pertains to the news and any additional catalysts. Who knows if other institutions will come in and do anything similar to what we saw today. I don't know, but it's not necessarily something that's unheard of. All right, folks, well, I hope that your trading week is off to a good start. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.